Hey everybody, welcome into the Shelby County High School Football Show. We are here at Thompson High School, a huge week ahead for the Warriors as they play host to Clay-Chalkville. We're going to talk a ton about that game on this week's show, our game of the week, the defending state champs in the 7A and 6A classification. So a huge matchup here between those two teams on Friday night at Warrior Stadium, but there's a lot to touch on this week. We've hit officially the midway point of the 2022 high school football season. Hard to believe we've reached that point in the year, and you look at what we've had so far. What an exciting season through the first 5 weeks. Now we hit week 6 and the exact midway point of the year. So after this week, it's on to the finish line from here, and we get a break from region play this week. But despite that, we've got some huge matchups taking place this Friday night and some teams that need some important wins going into the second half of region play if they want to win region championships, if they want to compete for one of those top 2 seeds, or if they just want to get into the playoffs as one of those top 4 seeds. We've got some challenging regions in this county, several teams still competing for playoff spots, all the teams still having a chance to get into the playoffs, and we've got a few with hopes of region titles as well. So a lot to touch on. Even though we've got a break from region play this week, we've got several big games. We've got 10 total to talk about. We've got a couple of county battles, and we've got 2 defending state champions right here on this field that will be going at it as well. So a lot to touch on. We're going to break down every game that we have coming up this Friday night, all 10 matchups, and then we're, of course, at the end going to name our SCR Stars of the Week from this past Friday night, and what a thrilling night it was yet again. We had some big games go down to the wire there this past week. Obviously, the Helena-Pelham rivalry, another thrilling one. A couple of teams going to be on bye this week. The Spain Park Jaguars going to have this week off. A tough loss for them last week to Vestavia Hills. As for the Calera Eagles, a huge win for them against Chilton County last week, a game that was 14-14 at the half, and the Eagles go on to bounce back in the second half. They win that one 38-14. The defense came out and played its best half of the season there against Chilton County in the second half of that game, and the offense seems to have put it together now the last couple of weeks, scoring 38 on Homewood, who currently sits atop the region standings, and then 38 again last week against a very good Chilton County football team this year. So big bounce-back win for the Calera Eagles, now 1-2 in region play, 2-3 overall, very much in the thick of a very crowded playoff battle in Class 6A Region 3. So a big win for the Calera Eagles last week. Now a week off as they head into what's going to be a challenging second half of region play. So we'll see what they're able to fix up going in to the next few weeks off of this bye week. So an important week for them of practice and rest this week and the next week as well. So that takes care of the 2 teams on bye this week. But now we jump in. We talk about all 10 games that we have coming up this Friday night, and we start right here with a very exciting and thrilling matchup that's going to take place between Thompson and Clay-Chalkville. Well, the last 3 years, it's been the Thompson Warriors. They've been the best team in this state regardless of classification, and they're the 3-time defending state champions for that exact reason. This year, you look at a somewhat similar situation, entering as the number 1 team, fresh off those 3 state championships, and still considered to be the favorite again this season. They start 0-2 to the season. They fall to Buford. They fall to Lipscomb Academy. And there starts to get a little bit of concern across the state as to, are they still the favorites in the 7A classification? But they've bounced back in a big way the last 3 weeks. 3 wins in a row for the Thompson Warriors, starting to look more like themselves, more like the teams of years past, and that was to be expected. This is a team that took on 2 of the best defenses in the country and 2 of the best football teams in the entire nation to start the season in Buford and Lipscomb, and had a chance to win those 2 games. Played well enough on the defensive side of the football to win both of those games, but ultimately some turnovers that lead to touchdowns were costly in each of those matchups. A very tight game going into the fourth quarter, at the end of the third quarter in both of those matchups, and a chance to win, but just couldn't make the plays offensively. Now Thompson started to bounce back on the offensive side of the football the last 3 weeks, scoring 30-plus, 34-plus in each of those 3 games, beating Vestavia Hills 34-14, beating Spain Park 35-14, and then obviously last week a dominant showing in a 48-3 effort on the road against the Chelsea Hornets. So Thompson sitting at 3-0 in region play, the difficult Class 7A Region 3, sitting at 3-2 overall with the only 2 losses coming in those national games to start the season, and 2 of the best teams in the country. Not only that, but Thompson having a chance to win both of those games in the second half as well. So the concern has died down a little bit. Thompson starting to cement itself as one of the favorites still in the 7A classification. But like we said just a few minutes ago, this is a team that's been considered the best in the state regardless of classification the last several years. This year, that very well could be the team that they will host right here on Friday night. The Clay-Chalkville Cougars bring into this matchup a 20-game win streak, and a lot of people consider them to be the best team in the state this season regardless of classification. So a very talented football team full of athletes and talent on both sides of the ball, and a very speedy team as well on both sides. You look at the wideouts, you look at what they're able to do offensively, and this is a team that likes to beat you with athleticism and speed. Still a physical group as well, but that speed is something else, and that's something that could make a difference here in this game against Thompson. But you look at what this team has done. Like I said, 15-0 last year, 5-0 start to this season. They've won 20 in a row, and boy, are they playing some good football. You look at what they've done so far this season. It's a defense that's given up 19 or less points in every game, and offensively, they've scored 40 or more in 18 of the last 20 games. So 18 of those 20 games in that win streak, they've scored 40 or more points, and they're averaging 43.6 points per game on the offensive side of the football this year. So this offense playing well, the defense giving up 7.8 points per game on that side of the ball this year. So you've got both sides clicking. They've played a pretty challenging schedule so far early in the season. Dominated Briarwood to start the year in a big win, 48-0 in week 1. Their one area of concern came against Pinson Valley, and that's going to be a key area of focus for me on this week's show, talking about this matchup in general, because you look at where they struggled in that game, and that was on the offensive side of the football. This is a team that's extremely talented offensively, but Pinson Valley, the best defense they've taken on this season, and they picked up a win, but only 14-12. So the defense still showed up in that one, but Pinson Valley's offense, or defense, credit them for finding a game plan that was successful against this talented Clay-Chalkville offense. Clay-Chalkville only able to put up 14 in a 14-12 victory there, and now you get a Thompson defense that's widely considered to be one of the best in the country, definitely one of the top defenses in the state. And you look at what they've done so far this season on that side of the ball, this is a defense that you look at the points per game that they're giving up, and it's not as talented as last year's, but that's because early in the season they struggled against Buford and Lipscomb, but it wasn't the defense that struggled. It was the offense that had at least 2 turnovers that went back to the end zone for touchdowns in those first 2 games of the season. So special teams turnovers early in the season were costly in giving up points. The defense, you look at what they've done, they've given up 14 or less in every game with them on the football field. They have not given up more than 14 so far this season. So you look at that, and then you look at them starting to piece things together on the offensive side of the football. But that's the big area of concern. You look at where Clay-Chalkville has struggled in their only game where they did struggle a little bit, that was on the offensive side of the football. You look at where Thompson has struggled this year, the games where they've struggled early in the season in those 2 losses, and even with some inconsistency since then, it's been on the offensive side of the football. So what that tells you is you've got 2 very good defenses, and they're going to be ready to roll in this football game, going up against some offenses that have shown some susceptibility so far this season. That's not to say this won't be an offensive shootout, because both of these offenses have speed, have athleticism, and they're going to be physical, but these defenses are so good, and they know that they can try to capitalize and find a game plan that could work potentially in this game. So that's where I see the biggest area of concern for both teams, is how do they find ways to move the football on a talented defense. And they've got the pieces to make it work. One of these teams will probably find a way to score some points, if not both of them. So don't get hung up that it's going to be a defensive slugfest the entire way, but expect this to be a lower scoring team or lower scoring game for two teams that are used to scoring at least in the 30s, if not in the 40s. Obviously, we talked about Clay-Chalkville scoring 40 or more in 18 of the last 20 games. Well, Thompson typically averaging 40-plus points per game as well the last couple of years. So you look at all of that, you put it together. One thing that I want to see happen in this game is Thompson's offense continue to show what they're capable of, especially from a consistent standpoint. This is a team, we saw them struggle early in the season just trying to get that identity because they lost so much talent on that side of the ball. We've rehashed this each and every week, but you lose a 2-year starting quarterback that was one of the best in the state, now at North Carolina. And Connor Harrell, you lose Ryan Peppins, the first Mr. Football in school history and the top receiver on your team last year. You obviously lose your next best receiver, your top 2 running backs and athletes there, and then some talent on the offensive line as well. In addition to that, they've struggled with an injury bug throughout the first few weeks of the season as well. So trying to get healthy and continue to find that identity on the offensive side of the ball. Now, this is what's happened the last few weeks. We've seen that offense progress. For 2 weeks, Zach Sims stepped up his game at the quarterback position, played extremely well. They beat Vestavia. They beat Spain Park. They scored 34 and 35 in those 2 games. Well, last week, Sims struggled a little bit. Trent Seaburn, the 8th grade quarterback, steps in. He's a kid that can really read the defense extremely well, has a very accurate and strong arm as well. So you look at those 2 quarterbacks, and I think that's going to be a big-time emphasis going into this game. Are they both going to play? Is one going to play? What's the storyline there? And I said this in my predictions this week. I'm typically a guy I don't believe in getting 2 guys out there. You want your offense to rally around one person, but you look at what each of these can do well, and it's tough not to play them both and feel good about what they can do. Trent Seaburn is just so talented at throwing the football already, and you know the coaching staff loves him because of the opportunities that they've given him. And Sims is an all-around athlete who can make plays inside and outside the pocket, and once he gets that consistency going, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the country as well. So you look at that, you've got 2 of the best quarterbacks right here in this state on your offense. You've got to find ways to put in plays for both of them, and I think that's going to be something that this offense continues to build off of. Now, you do want to have that consistency, and it's tough to have that momentum move forward when you've got guys trading in and out. So if one does find consistency running the offense, it may be a little bit more one-sided there, but I think both of these guys are very talented and very capable of making plays when they are in the game. So we'll see what happens there. That's going to be an area of focus going into this matchup because this is the best defense that they faced since those first 2 games of the season, and it's all about how they're going to bounce back and respond to adversity. In this one, those first 2 games of the season, played okay early in the game, really struggled in the opener against Buford all the way around on the offensive side of the football. But in that second game against Lipscomb, started to gain some confidence and then just fell flat in the second half. This week, going to have a consistent effort. Start strong, create a little bit of space there in the first half, and then try to come out and really lay the hammer down in the second half, which is what worked well last week against Chelsea. They didn't really get many opportunities in the first half, but were able to find ways to capitalize on the ones that they did. And then they got a 21-3 lead at the half and were able to get the ball back to start the second half, make it 28-3. And at that point, it's way too much against this Thompson defense. You look earlier in the year before that, though, this is a team that was starting slow on the offensive side of the football. So if they can capitalize early, that's a huge bonus because if you can get into the 20s with the defense that Thompson puts out there, that's going to be enough points most weeks of the season. Now, I say most weeks because Clay-Chalkville can easily put up points as well. So going to be important for Thompson to come out, play well on the offensive side of the football against a very, very talented defense, one of the best in the state, if not the best in the state, whereas that defense of Thompson is going to have to come out, really set a tone early in this game. They've been dealing with injuries on that side of the ball as well, but they've got some of the best players in the country on that side of the football. I expect them to be ready to roll, ready to make a statement. Now, this is a non-region game, so how much does that play into this? I don't really know. I think both of these teams desperately want to win this game to prove that if they win a state championship, they're not only the best in their classification, but the best in the state regardless of classification. So we'll see how it unfolds. I expect this to be a wild game. I expect it to be full of fireworks, a lot of excitement, a physical game, and you're going to see some of the best athletes not only in this state but across the country right here on this football field looking to pick up a huge win on Friday night. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Can't wait to see it unfold right here at Warrior Stadium. If you get the chance to come out and check this one out, do not miss that opportunity. It's going to be a fantastic football game between two of the best in the state. Well, that takes us into the rest of our games. We'll go classification by classification like we do every week, and we're going to start with a county battle between Oak Mountain and Briarwood, two teams separated by just a couple of miles there down Highway 119. So a big 280 area rivalry between these two teams, and you look at this one on paper and both desperately need to pick up a win going into the second half of region play. Oak Mountain started strong this year, a couple of tight wins to open the season 2-0, but they've lost 3 in a row since region play started. So now 0-3 in region play, 2-3 overall, and it's just been a slight bit of focus there for the Eagles so far. You look at the loss against Chelsea, just fell flat in that game, a 21-7 loss against a team they probably feel like they were better than going into that matchup, since Chelsea has shown some promise in the last few games. But for Oak Mountain to lose that one 21-7 just wasn't really competitive in that game. And then last week they looked to be bouncing back, an incredible game. This offense seemed to turn a page, but the defense continued to struggle, and that's the highlight of this year's team coming into the season. They know the defense has to play well for them to have success throughout the season, and they did for a while last week, but ultimately they lose a tough game to Tuscaloosa County in the final seconds, the final play of that game, as Tuscaloosa County plunges in from about a half yard out to win that football game 34-31, a game that Oak Mountain led really throughout the entire game. So a tough loss for the Eagles again. It's 2 tough losses in a row, really 3 in a row. That they've fallen in. Hewitt-Trussville to start region play, then Chelsea, and then last week it looked like they were going to win that one against Tuscaloosa County, ultimately fall in a very tight football game that was heartbreaking. But now it's time to bounce back, get some momentum going into the second half of region play, where you've got some difficult contests still left. Obviously going to take on Hoover the week after this. Then you've got Thompson, and then it's Spain Park and Vestavia. So you look at those, you really need to win probably 3 of those 4 games to have a good chance at making the playoffs, and Hoover's going to be that toss game in my opinion. I think that's a game where it's going to be a sneaky good game, but this week could determine how well they play in that game. You've got to get some confidence back on both sides of the football, but in particular the defensive side of the football going into that matchup with the Buccaneers, and that's going to be a tall task. They're taking on a Briarwood team this week that has also seen some heartbreak and been in some extremely exciting games. Almost every game of the season for the Lions has gone down to the wire, aside from that opening loss to Clay-Chalkville. Briarwood, last time out, they lose a heartbreaker too, by 1 point to the Pelham Panthers, a game they led 34-14 going to the final quarter. Ultimately lose that one 35-34 as Pelham scored 21 unanswered there in the final quarter. So Briarwood, the key thing for them, they were picking apart Pelham's defense in that football game. Christopher Vizina, the 5-star quarterback, the Clemson commit, hitting just about every receiver he could find and putting the ball on the money. Brady Wall, a big-time game in that one. Several others stepping up, even some young running backs. They played extremely well, and they scored on 4 consecutive drives between the second quarter and the third quarter. Then they built up that lead, and they just ultimately set on it, and they just couldn't make any plays the rest of the way because of that, trying to get that game over with, and ultimately that cost them. This week, I think they just put their foot on the gas, and they do whatever they can to put up points, and judging from that, if you get a 20-point lead, it's going to be continuing to rely on that arm of Christopher Vizina. He's too talented not to take advantage of. He can run the football extremely well, so you're going to see a lot of him, and I think he's going to have a big-time game because of that this week. So you look at these two teams and what that means going into this matchup. You've got an Oak Mountain defense that is hoping to get back to the expectations that they had early in the season, the success that they saw through those first 2 games of the season. And then you've got an offense that's continued to grow, had one of their best games of the season last week. Will Odell did his part, the sophomore quarterback. And then you look at Trey Vassell and the success that he's had at the running back position. So that offense is starting to grow. Now it's about the defense getting back where it needs to go. As for Briarwood, got to find consistency on the offensive side. Can't let your foot off the gas because of the talent that you you've got some receivers stepping up, which is the big question mark coming into the year, and then you've got those running backs starting to slowly emerge as well, which is also a big-time key. But with the threat of Vizina's legs and his arm, this is an offense that should be able to put up points. Now, the defense also going to have to play consistently, though. You look at what they did. When you give yourself a 20-point lead and you're a Briarwood defense, that's typically more than enough for the Lions, and they just struggled to close that game out against Pelham. Clayton Maines, Darius Copeland made some big-time plays, Trey Corkill as well. And so Briarwood going to have to find a way. If they get any kind of cushion like that, that defense has to be hungry and motivated, and that can make the difference in a game like this. So ultimately, Briarwood been in some extremely tight contests. I think this one is no different. A rivalry battle, two schools that are very close to each other. Some players grew up in the Oak Mountain system, now at Briarwood. So there's going to be a lot of excitement surrounding this game, a true rivalry where both teams want to go out and make a point, even though it's a non-region game. So we'll see how that one unfolds on the football field. But two teams I think that need to make a statement going into some important region games. You look at Class 6A Region 3 for the Briarwood Lions and what they have left as well. They've got some difficult challenges in a region that is wide open right now for those 4 playoff spots. So a big one for them to gain confidence, and obviously Class 7A Region 3 for Oak Mountain. We all know how dangerous that one is and what they've got left ahead. So a big-time game for them to get some confidence back as well. We'll see what happens when these two meet on Friday night at Herdmont Park. Going to be a lot of fun between these two rivals. This will be another big in-county, non-region battle between Chelsea and Pelham on Friday night. You look at these two teams entering this game, and Pelham, they have played a lot better than 1-3 this season. They lose their first 2 games of the season by 4 points. They win their opener to region play against Briarwood in a thrilling comeback, 35-34. And then last week, they take Helena to overtime, and they lose that game in a heartbreaker that went down to the wire, 31-24. So they've been right on the cusp. They could easily be undefeated on the season so far at 4-0, but instead they sit at 1-1 in region play. Not bad in Class 6A Region 3, which we just talked about how difficult that region has been, and 1-3 overall, but they're right on the cusp, and they've got some big opportunities ahead. So you know they want this one, an in-county rivalry battle against Chelsea for confidence purposes going in to the second half of region play. As for the Chelsea Hornets, they've had a difficult stretch so far this season. Obviously started 0-2 to the season, but they bounced back a little bit in the region opener against Tuscaloosa County. Looked strong in that one, had a chance to win that one and start region play 1-0. Fall short on a 2-point conversion attempt in the final seconds. Lose that one 42-41, but then a week later, they come back. The defense looks more like itself. They pick up a 21-7 win against rival Oak Mountain, a historic victory in Class 7A for the Hornets. Class 7A Region 3, they're now 1-1 in region play, and then they come back last week. They take on one of the best teams in the state, 3-time defending state champs, the Thompson Warriors. And early in that game, Chelsea goes on about a 7-minute drive to open up basically the majority of that first quarter, and they get a field goal. They can't convert that into a touchdown, take a 3-0 lead. Well, Thompson comes back in 2 plays, and they score a touchdown. A.J. Green, 2 rushes, and he takes that to the house on the second one, totaling that entire drive. And Thompson takes a 7-3 lead, and it was all Thompson the rest of the way. Chelsea controlled the clock in that first half, and they limited the opportunities that Thompson had on the offensive side of the football, going on some long drives offensively themselves, which didn't give Thompson many options when it came to scoring points, but Chelsea never could convert those drives into touchdowns, and that ultimately led to Thompson. They took advantage. They scored in 5 plays or less on all but 1 drive in that game, and they pull away, win that one 48-3. So Chelsea coming in, trying to find some confidence again after that loss, but you look at this matchup, this is more of an even matchup for them, and they've shown that they're better than I expected coming into the season and many others expected as well with what they've been able to do so far, particularly in that Tuscaloosa County game and that Oak Mountain game. Tuscaloosa County is a better football team this year than a lot of people want to give them credit for. So Chelsea starting to show some confidence. You look at sophomore quarterback Carter Dotson. He's played well at times. Emerson Russell, just a true physical, hard-working running back. He's played well. That offensive line has grown. And the defense has played well at times, but they've been inconsistent, obviously, in the 42-41 loss to Tuscaloosa County, and then last week in a 48-3 loss to Chelsea. So now it's about going into this matchup, really setting that physical tone, which you did well against Thompson on the offense. That offensive line played incredible in that first quarter or two for Chelsea last week. So it's about continuing that momentum up front on the offensive line, getting your defense back to the expectations they have. As for the Pelham Panthers, this is a team that has grown tremendously from the start of the season, and like I said, right on the cusp of being a 4-0 football team right now. They've got some confidence. Clayton Maines continues to get better and better at the quarterback position, a left-handed guy that can run and throw the football, has a better arm than what he started with this season and can really air it out there for the Panthers. Darius Copeland, one of the best athletes in the state, in my opinion, playing extremely well also at this point in the season. Those two alone have made some big-time plays, but they've got other guys on the offensive side, and this defense was going to be the highlight coming into the season, and they've played well enough, like I said, to be 4-0. The offense struggled early in the season, and then we saw some inconsistency from the defense at times, but they've played well enough for this team to be in every football game so far, and I think that's a consistent thing that continues throughout the rest of the season as well, including this week. So it's all about that offense continuing to make plays. If they give this defense some cushion, 2-3 score lead against Chelsea, that's a big-time bonus. So whoever comes out and starts this game fast in the first quarter or two can gain a little bit of a lead. That's going to be key, but these are two teams I expect to come out. They know that they need some confidence during this non-region game with some big ones left, so I expect them to come out, make some big-time plays. I think this is going to be a tight battle. Ultimately, Pelham's got those offensive playmakers that can get out in space and make people miss, and I think that could be the difference at the end of the night, but this is a Chelsea team that's going to make this a lot closer than it might would have been a week or two ago going into this matchup. So we'll see how it unfolds on the football field, but expect a tight battle that goes into the fourth quarter between these two teams, and then it's just all about which of these offenses can make the plays down the stretch. It's homecoming week for the Helena Huskies, and man, have they stepped up the last couple of weeks. Back-to-back overtime wins, and you look at 2 weeks ago what they were able to do against Chilton County, trailed 28-9 late in the third quarter, come back, tie that one 28-28 late in regulation with a field goal. Then they force overtime, win 35-28 last week against Pelham. One of the biggest games of the season every year, probably one of the most underrated rivalries in this state, and Helena's able to pick up a 31-24 victory in overtime. A game that could have gone either way, and they pick up the win. That's big time, especially with it being a region game and what they've got left on the schedule. Now it's a homecoming bout with Jackson Olin, and you look at this matchup and what Helena's been able to do successfully this year. This is a game where if they focus throughout this week, even with it being homecoming week, they're able to focus on their game plan and what they need to do to be successful. They should be able to walk away victorious on Friday night. This is a defense that's played extremely well so far this season, and that's got to be the focus going into this one. You look at what Helena's been able to do on the defensive side of the football so far. They're giving up 19.8 points per game. They've given up 28 or less in every game so far this season, and now they get a Jackson Olin offense that's struggling so far this season on the offensive side of the football. They've been shut out in back-to-back games. They're averaging 9 points per game on the offensive side of the football, and they've scored 25 or less in every game so far this season. Now, they did beat Pelham 14-10 to open the season, and we just saw that Helena went into overtime with Pelham. So on paper, these two teams are going to be pretty even throughout this matchup, but that Helena defense, I think, can make a difference, and ultimately the growth of the offense has been big time. The last 2 weeks without Jordan Washington, we expected this team to be a running football team with the pass game needing to grow throughout the season. Well, without their lead tailback the last couple of weeks, A.J. Horsted has stepped up at the running back position, gone over 100 yards in both of those games. He's had a successful run in that 2-game overtime win stretch. But you look at what else they've done. Dalton Llewellyn, the quarterback, has stepped up and made plays, but more importantly, Hunter Hell has given him a guy to target in the passing game. He had the game-winning touchdown a week ago, game-winning touchdown catch, and also the game-winning interception against Pelham. So great hands there from Hunter Hell, and the week before that, in that overtime win against Chilton County, close to 200 receiving yards in that one. So he stepped up, been a big-time target for the Huskies, helped this offense move forward, and that's going to be huge going into this game because this is a Jackson Olin defense that has played well so far this season, but they're giving up 25.5 points per game on the year. So you look at that, scoring just 9 points per game, giving up 25. You kind of flip that for Helena, scoring 20 or giving up just 19.8, and they're playing well offensively so far as well. So expect that to be a continued trend this week, that defense to play well, and for that offense to continue to try to balance things out and keep the defenses on their toes. I expect Helena, if they've got that focus this week, to walk away victorious going into the second half of region play. This is a big homecoming game, and I think they know that because this is a difficult and physical Jackson Olin team that's going to be ready to roll on the defensive side. Helena's going to have to be ready to go as well. If they do, they should walk away victorious and improve to 5-1 on the season. So an important one as they head in to the second half of region play. Coming off a bye week, the Shelby County Wildcats are going to get one of the best teams in the 5A classification this year, and a familiar face going to be bringing in the number 5 Moody Blue Devils to Columbiana. Jake Gaines, the former Chelsea star who played at Shelby County High School as a Chelsea player back in the day, a former assistant right here at Thompson High School, now leading in his first year the Moody Blue Devils, and they've been outstanding so far this season. Off to one of their best starts in school history at 5-0, the number 5 team in the 5A classification, and just playing tremendous on both sides of the football. But as for Shelby County, you look at the 3-1 start that they're off to as well, now entering off a bye week, an extra week to prepare for this big game, and I think that creates a lot of excitement. Obviously, having that bye week, you get extra tension building up, ready to go in this game, but you also get to rest up, heal up, and prepare even longer for one of the best teams in the state. So that's only going to be a benefit for the Wildcats going into this one, led by Zeb Ellison, his second year at his alma mater as the head coach. A lot of passion coaching this team, and you can see that every time they play a football game. So the story of the season so far for Shelby County, it has been what they've been able to do from a physicality standpoint. They may not have the offense right now that's going to score 35, 42 plus points per game. They're not going to outspeed you or out-athlete you every week on the football field, but they've got that physical mentality and mindset to go out and really just line up and be as physical as they can, in addition to having talent as well. So this is a team that's very young, especially on the offensive side of the football. They've got some guys that are playing on both sides of the ball as well. But you look at this defense, and that's where the physicality has really shined so far this season. They're giving up 13.3 points per game, and they've given up 7 or less in 3 of their 4 games so far this season. So playing well on the defensive side of the football, but it's been the offense that struggled a little bit at times this season, and scoring 17.8 points per game, and they've scored 23 or less in every game. Now they get one of these top teams in the state, so it's a matter of how productive can your offense be against one of the most athletic defenses in the 5A classification this season. And you look at what Moody has done successfully. They're playing well on both sides of the ball. You look at what they've been able to do offensively. This is a team that they've scored 30-plus in every game and 40-plus in 4 of 5 so far, and they've also scored 50 or more in 3 of their 5 games. So a team that's playing extremely well on the offensive side of the football, scoring about 50 points per game. And then you look at what they're doing defensively, giving up just 17 on the defensive side. But you look at this offense, Cole McCarty, the quarterback, he's already got 1,400-plus yards, 19 touchdowns on the season. Davion Dozier, one of the best wide receivers in the state, regardless of classification. Blaine Burke, he's averaging about 138 yards per game at the running back position. So you look at all that, they've got so much talent on the offensive side. They're able to spread it out, use those athletes. Even with Shelby County's defense playing as well as they are this season, I think that's a benefit for the Wildcats, and it will pay off for a while. But ultimately, I think this Moody offense going to be too much on that side of the ball. And as for Shelby County's offense, it's going to be a little bit difficult to score enough points in this game to keep up. Your defense keeps you in it for a while, but you've got to be able to score points to take advantage. They're going to be down one of their best players in Carter Sheehan, who went out with an injury a couple weeks ago. It was amazing to see how this team rallied around him, finishing off that win a couple of weeks ago. So it's a matter of this offense finding that identity. They've got some young playmakers. Bradley Horton, one of the most physical players on this football team. He can play at linebacker. He can play at running back, and he's had a ton of success this season. If they can sustain long drives, be physical with him in the running game or with the quarterback in the running game, then that can lead to success. But that's all dependent on the offensive line stepping up against a very talented defensive front of Moody. So those are going to be the big keys to look out for in this game. Ultimately, I think Moody's athleticism and speed going to make the difference on the offensive side of the football. Shelby County's defense is going to keep it tight for a while, but then it comes down to being able to keep up with their offense as well, which starts up front with the offensive line. So going to be a fun game between these two great head coaches, and I think they're going to have a fun battle with each other in Columbiana. Going to go into an exciting matchup, looking to pick up big victories going in to that second half of region play. We'll see how it unfolds on the football field, but these two I know going to go at it, pull out some tricks, and it's going to be a lot of fun in a non-region matchup between Moody and Shelby County. Montevallo's defense continues to play extremely well. They gave up just 7 points last week to West Blockton. The problem was that the offense just couldn't get anything going early enough in that game. They finally did score in the final 4 minutes, makes it 7-6, and they decided to go for 2 and ultimately could not get the 2-point conversion. They lose to West Blockton 7-6. That was a good defensive West Blockton team, so for them to have a good defensive performance, not surprising. With Montevallo's offense still trying to find that consistency so far this season. But for Montevallo's defense, just keep doing what you're doing. My goodness, playing extremely well so far this season. They're giving up 11.5 points per game, and they've given up 0 and 7 the last 2 weeks of the season, and they've given up 21 or less in every game so far. So the defense playing tremendous football through the first few games of the year. Now it's about following suit with the offense, being able to find some points on that offensive side of the football. This week they travel to Jemison. Going to be a chance for a bounce-back win, but this is a team that's a classification higher in Class 5A. If Montevallo's offense can get into the 20s, score 21, 24, 28 points, that's going to be a huge plus with the defense that they're going to put out there, because this is a Jemison team that's scoring just 13.3 points per game, and they've scored 14 or less the last 3 weeks. So Montevallo's defense has to be going into this one licking their chops, hungry, ready to make another statement on that side of the ball. So it's all about the offense scoring some points, getting into the 20s against a team that struggled to do that so far this season. That's a huge plus if you can do that, and that not only gives your defense some breathing room, but it helps your offense grow some confidence going into some important games ahead. So we'll see how it unfolds. Jemison giving up 31.5 points per game so far this season. So Montevallo's got to capitalize on that. You look at the way that these two teams have played, we've at least seen some promise for Montevallo on one side of the ball, and the offense continuing to grow. So going up against this Jemison team, giving up a lot of points, Montevallo needs to make a statement on offense, and that defense just needs to continue doing what it's been doing. It was an emotional and heartbreaking scene for the Vincent Yellow Jackets this past Friday night, taking on number 5 BB Comer, looking to make a statement in the 2A classification, and they led that game throughout the contest, ultimately several chances to win it, but late in the final 20 seconds, BB Comer played heartbreak. They win that one 36-35, and man, your heart just goes out to Vincent for everything that they poured into that. They knew how important it was for them to really make a statement in that game. But guess what? Looking back on that, they did. This is a team that has grown so much the last few years, but especially this season. All the hard work that head coach Lucas Weatherford has poured into this team, and his players have believed in growing. And this year it's paid off with all those players coming back on both sides of the ball. It's been a huge benefit, and you just took the number 5 team in the 2A classification down to the wire, leading for the majority of that game. So you look at that. To me, that tells me that you're a top 10 team and that you could easily be a top 5 team in the 2A classification, and that's what they have to build off of. There's no time to sulk and look back at that game and the emotional side of it. It's time to move forward and say, heck, we're one of the best teams in the state. Let's go. It's time to get after it, and I think that's exactly what Weatherford will get his guys to believe in, and I think that's what the players already think themselves because of the success that they've seen this season, and this is a very big week. It's a non-region game, but it doesn't get more important than this to show that you can bounce back from that loss, heartbreaking loss a week ago, and that you can still compete not only for a region champion, or not only for one of those top 2 spots, but still possibly a region championship with some difficult games against Isabella, against Thorsby still left on the schedule in region play. So this one a big one for confidence reasons, just to show that you can put that game behind you, and this is a game that they should win. Vincent, with the confidence, if they continue making the plays like they've made so far this season, is the better team on paper. You look at Childersburg, they've scored 22 points per game, given up 29.8. Listen to Vincent's numbers. Scored 50 points per game, given up 12.4 points per game. So they're scoring almost 30 more points per game and giving up about 17 less per game. Now listen to this. BB Comer beat this Childersburg team earlier in the season by 2 touchdowns. I believe 35-21 was the final in that one. So you look at what Vincent just did against BB Comer, arguably should have won that game. Then you got to feel confident about your chances going into this one. If you focus this week, if you put that game last week behind you, and if you continue to do what's made you successful to this point in the season. So if Vincent's able to do that, they should walk away with a victory, big bounce-back win, and improve their record at this point in the season going into the second half of region play, where they can not only compete for a playoff spot, but at least home field advantage, possibly still a region championship with the success that they've seen so far. So we'll see how this one unfolds on the football field, but Vincent should walk in very confident even after that heartbreaking loss a week ago. Now we jump to the AISA and ACSC, and all 3 teams, Coosa Valley, Cornerstone, Evangel, going to be in action this Friday night in some big games. And you look at the Cornerstone Chargers playing in the 8-man region of the AISA this year, the first time they've had that, and Cornerstone has kind of cemented themselves as the favorite in the state in that 8-man region of the AISA after last week's thrilling win against Springwood. Against Springwood. They win that one 52-50 on the final play of the game. They trailed there going into that final play. Zeke Adams hit Logan Lightsey for a 55-yard touchdown that gave Cornerstone a 52-50 victory and handed Springwood its first loss of the season. Now sitting at 3-0, the Chargers are going into this matchup against North River Christian that is sitting at 1-4 overall in the season. It's a team that they're scoring 31.8 points per game, but they're giving up 52.6. That's not a good sign going in against a matchup with Cornerstone, who just scored 52 last week. So scoring the average that North River has given up so far this season. I do expect Cornerstone's defense needs to show some improvement this week, obviously, after giving up 50, taking on a North River offense that's been successful this year. But ultimately, Cornerstone's offense, young playmakers really starting to step up on that side of the ball. I think that's the difference going up against a North River defense that's been very susceptible so far this season. As for the Coosa Valley Rebels, now sitting at 0-5, and the story continues to be the offensive struggles there for the Rebels as they travel to Banks Academy this week. Through 5 games, the Rebels are scoring 3.4 points per game, and they've scored 11 or less in every game so far this season, and they've been shut out 3 times. So the offense is struggling to get going. The defense is playing well at times, but this week that's going to have to be the key, is for that defense to really play lights out, because Banks has struggled to score points so far this season, scoring just 12.8 points per game. But they've scored double figures on several occasions, and they've played one of the more difficult schedules in the AISA. So still giving up just 24.8 points per game on that side of the football. So we'll see what happens between these two teams. Coosa Valley's defense could keep this close, but we just haven't gained that trust in the offense to see them be able to make plays, even if the defense does keep it close. So I think that's ultimately the difference, unless they find something this week throughout practice to find some points on the offensive side. As for the Evangel Lightning, a team that's just been dominant so far this season, one of the best under head coach Tim Smith, and he's had some really good football teams, but you look at what they've done so far this season, pick up a 59-14 win last week against Freedom Academy, handed Freedom their first loss of the season. Now they get the chance to do the same against Lighthouse this week, who's sitting at 5-0, just like Evangel going into this matchup. Lighthouse has wins of 34-33, so that one by 1 point, 39-20, 63-26, 42-33, and 34-28. So they've won 3 really close games so far, whereas Evangel really hasn't been challenged to this point in the season. 65-13, 55-0, 48-0, 41-0, and 59-14. So they've given up 14 or less in every game. They've scored 41 or more in every game, and they've got 3 shutouts from that defense. So just too talented on both sides. Ultimately, I think that's too much of an uphill climb for Lighthouse in an ACSC game. I think Evangel's going to be ready to roll on the road in this one, pick up a big ACSC win. It's time to name our SCR Stars of the Week from this past week of the high school football season. Past week was week 5, and now we've hit the midway point, so teams really starting to form into shape, and some of the standout players, a lot of these guys are going to be on the all-county team at the end of the year, starting to really cement themselves as some of the best players in this county and across the state. And we're going to start in the 7A classification with A.J. Green here at Thompson, and what he's been able to do this season. Had a tremendous season so far, and he's really becoming one of the best backs in the state of Alabama. But he had 8 carries, 112 yards, and 3 touchdowns rushing. Also had a reception for 42 yards and a touchdown in that 48-3 win against Chelsea. And he only played 1 series of the second half, so a guy that's really starting to separate himself as one of the best running backs in the state. Also on the offensive side, Trent Seaburn stepped in, played tremendous for the Warriors last week against Chelsea. 5 of 5 passing, 134 yards and 2 touchdowns in that game, and he only played a couple of drives as well there early in the second half. So a big-time showing from Seaburn, the 8th grade quarterback there for the Warriors. On the defensive side, Jake Ivey led the Warriors with 7.5 tackles, had a tackle for loss as well, as he's having to step up and play an important role with some injuries on the defensive side for Thompson so far this season. He's a key player there for the Warriors. As for the Oak Mountain Eagles, Trey Vassell, 30 carries, 175 yards, and a tough loss to Tuscaloosa County. He continues to be the lead guy on the offensive side for Oak Mountain. Will Odell, the sophomore quarterback, 8 of 13, 124 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's grown tremendously there for the Eagles, one of his best games of the season, and he did his part to help the team pick up a win. Just fell a little bit flat again on the defensive side there at Oak Mountain. But as that offense continues to progress, that can be a big key for the Eagles moving forward. The Helena Huskies, a big overtime win against Pelham, their rival, and A.J. Horsted continues to be a big reason why. 190 yards, 2 touchdowns on 33 carries for the Huskies in that overtime victory, 31-24. And like I said, Hunter Hell continues to be a story. The last couple of weeks, big-time games. This week didn't total a ton of yards as the receiver there for the Huskies. He finished with the game-winning touchdown, however, in overtime, and also had the game-winning interception on that final play from Pelham as Clayton Maines heaved it into the end zone. Hell jumped up, took that one away, picked up the interception. On the other side of that game, though, Maines had an incredible game, 270 passing yards for the Panthers, continues to showcase his talent on the offensive side. Also a talented runner there, and Darius Copeland, 149 yards and 2 touchdowns there for Pelham in that difficult loss. That connection there, that duo, has been dynamic, and I expect that to continue to be the case the rest of the way. The Calera Eagles, like we said at the top of the show, a huge win this past week against Chilton County. Both sides of the football showed up from start to finish, but particularly in the second half. If they play like that the rest of the way, look out, because they'll compete not only for a playoff spot, but they still got a chance to get home field advantage in this region as well. They're going to be a tough out for anybody the rest of region play. Braylon Farrington, 6 catches, 100 yards. Just continues to be tremendous there on the offensive side of the ball, and everybody knows he's going to touch it throughout the game. So he's doing some great things there for the Eagles. Deserves a lot of credit and deserves more Division I offers with the talent and speed that he has at the receiver position. Defensively, the whole defense deserves a shout-out. They really stepped up big time in that second half. It's a 14-14 game going into the half. They come out, don't give up a single point to an offense that's been really good at Chilton County so far this season. So defense played well, and Michael Banks Mason, what a performance he had in that win. 15 tackles, 1 sack, 1 tackle for loss, and a 96-yard pick six for the Eagles. He is an incredible player. Like Farrington, deserves more respect than he's getting so far this season. He entered as one of the leaders of this defense. They've got several big-time playmakers, and he stepped up to the challenge and is leading this team, and he knows what they need the rest of the year for them to be successful, and he showed that last week. I expect that to be a continued trend. As for the Montevallo Bulldogs, Charlie Adams, 9 tackles, including 4 for a loss and a blocked field goal for the Bulldogs. 7-6 loss in that one, but the defense played well, and he was a big reason why. The Vincent Yellow Jackets, several guys to mention in that one. Tough, heartbreaking loss, but you look at what they were able to do successfully, and boy, Zach Wright has just continued to be a storyline for the Yellow Jackets. 22 tackles on Friday night in that game. That's unreal, and that's something that's almost a consistent thing. He's in double digits every week. He's going to be one of the best at the end of the season when it comes to those numbers, looking at total tackles. As for other guys, Grayson Gold and Ray Albright, also big games on the defense. You talk about 22 tackles. Well, you look at what Gold did, 15 tackles in that game, and then Albright 12 tackles. So those 3 guys really stepping up on the defensive side for Vincent. As for Trey Youngblood on the offensive side, 118 yards, 2 touchdowns on 7 receptions. Also had a 26-yard passing touchdown on a halfback pass. So he continues to be a standout athlete on the offensive side, as does Raquelis Robertson, 19 carries, 179 yards, and a touchdown, as Vincent scored plenty of points in that game, but ultimately a tough 36-35 loss there for the Yellow Jackets. At Cornerstone, like we said, that 52-50 win in the final seconds. Zeke Adams, a huge game for him, 11-31, 363 and 5 touchdowns passing. Ran for 167 yards and 2 touchdowns on 20 carries, had 5 2-point conversions. That on the offensive side. Now to the defensive side, where he had 13 tackles and 2 fumble recoveries. So just an all-around playmaker there for the Chargers. Likely don't win that game without that effort from him on both sides of the ball. Noah Schober, also a huge game, 6 catches, 249 yards, 2 touchdowns there for the Chargers. So basically an average of about 50 yards per catch almost in that game as they pick up that thrilling win. So some talent there that we just mentioned, and I expect more of that the rest of the way, but especially as we jump back into region play the week after this, there's some big, big games left this year, and these guys continue to have their names called each and every week. Well, that's going to do it for this week's Shelby County High School football show from here at Thompson High School, and we've got, like I said, an exciting night of non-region action, the midway point of the 2022 season. So, I mean, we're in the thick of things now, and teams are going to be looking to finalize any improvements they need to make here for this final leg of region play the next few weeks. The playoffs just about 6 weeks away now, as we've got some huge games, not only this week, but in the coming weeks. It's going to be a thrilling sprint to the finish here for all of our teams across Shelby County looking to make it into the playoffs this season. I'll be out here this Friday night, our game of the week. 3-time defending state champs Thompson hosting the 6A defending state champs Clay-Chalkville, who bring in a 20-game winning streak. This is going to be an electric game between these two, and I can't wait to watch every single second of it. So I'll see you here on Friday night for the Facebook Live pregame show and then our coverage here from Thompson High School. Until then, that's going to do it from Warrior Stadium. I'll see y'all in a few days.